Hey everybody, this is Mandela Effects Watchdog. How you doing out there? As always, thanks for the subscriptions, the likes, the comments. With that said, let's get underway. I've been trying to write down dates on particle collisions and seeing if the changes happen around them dates. And the one that's got me kind of baffled is says here October 2009, CBS Cares debuted a commercial with Mandela about race, creed, and judging others. And what's funny is a few years before that, he wasn't around. He was had died in July of 1991. And this date coincides with when the CERN collider fired up, 08 and 09. You have the McDonald's logo changing around then, 08 or 09. And we'll check out a bunch of these dates. Oh, it also says he was on a radio show April 2nd, 2009 on Boston radio. So I'm not sure if when exactly he popped back into existence. But they're around the same time or a couple years later, the Sex and the City changed. I'm not sure if that's changed the same time. Because it took me a while to see that commercial, so that change seemed to happen August 2010. Let's see. Anyway, just digging back. 1971 is when first started the proton-to-proton collisions. I don't know of any Mandela effects back then. I wasn't even living back then, and so they were probably pretty small, if any. That's probably what made them want to build a bigger machine. 1991 is an interesting year. That's when Mandela died the first time in July. And the same time, now looking back, I noticed the Converse emblem was switched even back in 91 on the debut of the Nirvana Smells Like Teen Spirit video. You can check that video out for yourself just by typing in Nirvana debut, and it will show you the video. And right at the beginning of the video, you could see Dave Grohl, the drummer's shoes, were the patches on the inside. I had asked my friend, what's the deal with that? Because it had looked different to me. And they just sort of like, oh, it's just a new look, or, those are just knockoffs. And so it batted me off the trail even back then. Not that I was really on the trail, but I was always looking for, things out of the ordinary like that. And so it sort of batted me off the trail there. And now I've learned that I should have not just, trusted my friend and looked into it more. Of course, we didn't have the internet back then, so there's not really any way to look into it. You just sort of go on what you were told back then, those days. If it sort of makes sense, it sounded logical, you sort of went with it. You just had no way to cross-reference like you do today. Earth 2 debuted November of 94. You know how art mimics life and life mimics art thing? What if that was sort of in your face, that even back in 94 we was pushed into this different reality. And then right here it says 1989 collision, antimatter collider. And I'm wondering if I had Converse, the Chuck Taylors, in I think 88, but 89, by the time 89 happened, they had worn out. So there's no way to check that. But definitely by 91, it seemed to me that the Converse had switched sides, the emblem had. So other than Mandela and those emblems changes, I don't know what else changed at that time. And 95, Stargate debuted 1995 TV series um, that has sort of something to do with warping from one end of the universe to another, and that's sort of what happened with moving from the Sagittarius arm of the galaxy to the Orion spur of the galaxy. Did they use a Stargate? Is CERN a Stargate? Um, you know, tell me what you think. And then in 1987, two comedies by almost the same name aired on the same month, was sort of another slap in your face. One is A Different World, and the other one is Out of This World, and they both aired in September, 15 days apart or something like that. And I looked it up, and 1955, it says Area 51 they had purchased the property and they turned it into Area 51 in 1955. But in another reality, it seemed like it was 1947 when they had Area 51, when the Roswell thing actually went down. So I'm still looking into that one. And 1 year later, in 1956, the term extraterrestrial that term was invented. 1 year after they had acquired the space at Area 51, and at some point changed the highway to the Area 51 or extraterrestrial highway. So that's really interesting. October 6, 1967, Star Trek Mirror Mirror debuted, which is sort of the same thing was going on now, that malfunction in the transporter room, and then they went to an alternate reality where Spock had a beard. And the other, Captain Kirk went aboard their Enterprise and was like a warmonger, and a totally different Captain Kirk. So it's like they knew this concept even back in '67, and even when the Twilight Zone was going on. Let's see, Twilight Zone was debuted in 1959, it says. And then somebody made a comment that, CERN was invented in 1955. I've never heard of CERN ever, so I don't know if that's a Mandela effect itself or not. And so they had these early concepts about, warping reality or changed reality, so I wonder by these earlier particle collisions when they early 50s or 60s or even the one to 71, whether they got an idea of what they could do. Somewhere in 1999 and 2000, the catchphrase, "Do you smell what the rock is cooking?" changed to "If you smell what the rock is cooking." And it was weird, but I didn't really, I was like, maybe I was, just misremembering. But no, that does seem to be what it was. And so it's been so long. When Moneybags 73 came out with the video, I really was like, I don't think so. And then I sort of remembered, like, yeah, I vaguely remember "Do You Smell What the Rock is Cooking?" like way back in 2000 or 99. And that was weird when it switched. It was just like switching to a digital clock or digital reality. It just switched seamlessly. So, it was like, I thought it was "Do you smell what the rock is cooking?" And it sounded weird. If you smell, what if? So what? So what if you smell what the rock is cooking? Big deal. It don't make sense. But "Do you smell what the rock is cooking?" makes a lot more sense. And around that same time, if you were to turn 1999 upside down, you get three sixes, which is the sign of a beast, which is sort of like CERN, quantum computing. Even the apple in the Apple products is symbolic of Adam and Eve, and um, you know uh, so I think we in 1999 we passed through the gates of hell, if you were, or symbolically did. 2000 December 14th, 2016 is when I became aware of this effect. And Apollo 13 at that time was Houston, we've had a problem. And then by the big, January of 2017, it seemed to switch to Houston, we have a problem. And it seemed to be Houston, we have a problem in the 90s. So that was one that people were saying there's a flip flop on. But the weird thing is I checked out Jacob Israel's video, and his is published on November 22nd that it was Houston, we have a problem, that was switched back, which is impossible because I had known about the effect and I had documented it on December 14th that it was Houston, we've had a problem. So how is he perceiving it the opposite on that given date? But I remember checking out the bit video then, and both our dates were in concurrence then. He was saying that it was Houston, we've had a problem, and I checked out the clip, and it's Houston, we've had a problem, and we were in accordance in December 14th. But looking back now, he put out a video on November 22nd that documents that it was Houston, we have a problem, that it had switched, but that's not what I have written down here. I became aware of it in 2016, December 14th, so there's no way that it was that yet. At least not for me. And then I watched I Am Laszlo's show where he was showing that it was Houston, we've had a problem, and once it switched, his videos seemed to had, like, he was pitching a different tune, then he was saying Houston, we have a problem again. But I saw that video like half a month before and it said the opposite. He's, when that happens, the person seems to be unaware that they pitched a different story just a half a month before. Like their memories have been altered as well as reality altered. And I thought it was funny, in 1998 they come out with Metallica, something like, and the memory remains, almost like they knew the experiments were going on, and once they got through the experiments, they knew that it didn't affect memory, it just affected reality. And that's when they come up with that song, and the memory remains. But then in 2012, they undid the safety precautions where they started experimenting directly on humans, and that coincides with the end of the world Mayan calendar thing. So I don't appreciate that at some point we become test subjects for the effect somewhere around then. I didn't agree to that. They don't have free reign over us. They shouldn't. Okay, the next one says JFK card changed in July 7th, 8th, and 9th. And that was Esoteric Detective. And that's I was unaware of the effect at that time. And that C-3PO's legs seemed to have been okay at those dates. But the movie the JFK movie had 3 seats by the time I was aware of it. So I became aware December 2016. So by December 2016, those seats it was like a third row of seats. So that was weird. And, in the beginning of the JFK movie, it has that governor's big fat head sort of in the way. And I picked up that movie at thrift store, and when I watched it in, I guess it was May, it seemed to be right. And then when I watched it again in, December, when I figured out about the thing, it seemed to be like his big fat head was in the way, and that third row, that middle row of seats, he has a big fat head in the way that takes up a lot of the frame, especially when you don't have widescreen. And I just didn't recognize it. It was like, what the heck's with this? My movie has a different look to it. But when I watched it during the time when this show, the Esoteric Detective show aired, it seemed to be fine for me. It didn't have the 2 rows of seats, but for Esoteric Detective, it had the 3 rows of seats already. So, like the Jacob Israel video, this video sort of, it's like there's a wave that hits people first than other people, like the lunar wave. So when they had that swirl thing over Switzerland, and people were thinking that was, the wave going over the Earth, it seems to hit people in certain areas first, and then travel out and then get these other people's, and that would explain why people's videos aren't jiving with one another, coinciding with one another. So I'm keeping my eye on that. And then it says here that quantum computing started early 1980s with Richard Feynman and Yuri Mann. It says it had the potential to simulate things that a classical computer couldn't. So I've never heard of quantum computing ever before 2016. I just never heard of it. And then these are sort of unrelated. I was looking into when Atari debuted, September 11th of 1977. And Star Wars debuted May 5th of 1977. Now, Star Trek, J.J. Abrams came out May 8th of 2009. See, now, that's right around when Mandela sort of come back to life. And they're featuring, altered reality Star Trek, where, they have different actors playing Captain Kirk and Spock and everybody else. And so it's this art mimics life, life mimic arts thing back in May 8th of 2009. So I think or suspect that Mandela had come back to life somewhere around 2009, around the time that they switched the cable to a digital signal. And that was June 13th of 09. The cable was switched from analog to digital. I saw one presenter say that we went from an analog reality to a digital reality, but I'm not really sure about that one yet. So that was really interesting. And then here's another one that I'm sort of suspicious of. Slayer Seasons into the Abyss debuted October 9th in 1990. And when I watched the video today, it has the pyramids the new way, where it has the big pyramid on the end, another big one in the middle, and then the small one on the end. So I'm thinking that's been the way since 1990. But in 89, when they did this antimatter collision, before they did this 89 collision, that the pyramids were normal. So the pyramids have been messed up since 1990, according to my notes, and depending on which reality you're from. So the people that get on here and argue, they're thinking one thing, like everybody's in one dimension and the dates are different from one another. But I found out that, like, for you, something would happen in this particular date, and this other person has another date in mind, and they'll argue because one will think the other's right. And the funny thing is that they're both right. Is because the Mandela wave hit this person once, because say this property or this place that this person's living is closer to, like, say, Switzerland, when they shoot that wave out. Well, this person gets hit first, so then they're affected, but by the time it hits us, it's been another, length of time, so it offsets when these dates occurred. And nobody's really talking about exactly when the stuff changed. Like, one comment said that they believe that they were working at McDonald's, and they come in after like a couple days off, and they see like the logos change, and the cups or the wrappers or whatever have a different look to them. And it was like, hey, who changed everything? And they're like, what are you talking about? It's always been this way. So I got my mind on that. Like, half the population shifts while the other don't. And then who decides, or what's the deciding factor whether you shift or not, or whether you are native on this world? And the bad thing about being a native is that they are completely unaware that we're telling the truth, and that, we're right about, these dates, and they disagree with, but we're both right. Both people are right because they are projecting when they remember the effect, and it's, according to my notes, it's possible to be right and this other person be right depending on when the wave hit you. It's not like it's not like the whole it takes time for this reality or cern wave to travel. So if it hits this person once, it's going to mess up the dates or offset the dates from when it hits you like a month before over in this territory. So let me know if you think there's something to that. That's just some random notes. It says Matrix was released on VHS December 7th, 1999. It was released in theater in March. And I think that, the concepts of the Matrix are put there for us to understand this reality shifting, because a lot of what was going on here was going on in the Matrix. Like when you saw the cat and he had the deja vu, and Trinity says that's a sign that they changed something. Oh, really? So I think that was a clue right there, but I don't know the full, aspect of it yet. I was jumped by a gang in October 22nd of 09. So I was thinking, when they hit me with brass knuckles, they might have killed me. And reality is not letting me see that I was killed, to set up a whole nother reality with different variables. And like I wouldn't notice, right? So I would just continue my life thinking I wasn't dead. Just much like the tank guy. A lot of people remember that tank guy protester that he got ran over. I've never seen that before, so I have no way of knowing one way or the other. But if the community is right, and that he was killed and now he wasn't, that's just like on the Matrix when they see the cat and it says the deja vu is usually when they change something. So right there's the Matrix sort of enlightening us about what's going on in this sort of art mimics life, life mimics art, reality we live in. Let's see. That's about it. Let's see. 2009. 2009 is when, or it's 2009 or 10 is when the Mandela community discovered that Mandela was still alive. And it was Fiona Broome. Some say 2009, and some say 2010. So take your pick, but it said Fiona Broome was at Dragon Con talking, and the security guard had sort of eavesdropped in their conversation, was like, hey, you remind me of those people that think Nelson Mandela is still alive. And then their group started talking, correlating their memories. But how did the security guard know? Anyway, no way to know that. I mean, he must have heard from somewhere. Or maybe the security guard's the one that started the whole thing, because he knew before Fiona Broome did. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Like and comment down below, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.